Good evening, my friends, ladies, gentlemen, and everything else in between. There are plenty of them these days. I wanted to jump on last minute. I haven't notified anybody, so I do apologise. I'll probably get cancelled for this. But what's new? If Labour get their way with this new assault on speech, I'm probably ripe for the slammer myself, my friends. Make no mistake about it. Angela Rayner is reportedly set to get to grips with a blasphemy council. So Britain's new speech police are going to be created and dictated by Angela Rayner. Now, listen, I'm not a snob. That's not me knocking someone having an accent. I mean, bloody hell, I'd be somewhat hypocritical if I was in that position, wouldn't I? More hypocritical than a Labour government that calls the Tories corrupt and then ends up more bent than a 9-bob note. But Angela Rayner, there's no reason to speak like you are literally still in primary school. But I digress. I need to actually talk to you about the nation's self-proclaimed champion of the working class, who, let's be honest, wouldn't last 5 minutes in an actual job if she had to go into business and all the rest of it. Well, she's decided that Britain really needs, right now, a council on Islamophobia. So much so that she's going to, as reports suggest, get together with Dominic Grieve. Now, Dominic Grieve is somewhat grievous in his attempts to undermine British democracy and British independence. He did all he could to overturn our vote for Brexit, and the Labour Party have got together with him to actually come up with these recommendations for what the definition of Islamophobia should look like. Now, make no mistake about it, this is deeply troubling. Dominic Grieve is wetter than an otter's pocket, and I am deeply, deeply concerned. That's why I'm doing this emergency stream right now about what this actually will look like in the round. Now, to me, this coming immediately after the Manchester police have named, and this is on the Free Speech Union website, Manchester police have actually named the guy who burnt a copy of the Quran, placing his life in immediate jeopardy and danger by effectively saying that there's a fatwa attached to his head that Greater Manchester Police themselves are solely responsible for, in listing not only this guy's name, but this guy's address as well. The actual street, the place where he lives, that was listed in the Greater Manchester Police listing. Let's not forget that the Batley Grammar School teacher is still in hiding today. Let's not forget that in Europe, we've just seen someone murdered for doing exactly the same thing. And Greater Manchester Police think it's a good idea to put a bounty on this man's head by naming his location. I think it's an act of insanity, and I think they should be held responsible. And the Free Speech Union say that they will, by the way. The man pleaded guilty to causing racially and religiously aggravated intentional harassment. Last time I checked, Islam wasn't a race. But they've done it all the same. They've charged him for that. He's admitted to it. And the Free Speech Union believe that Greater Manchester Police should have liaised with the Crown Prosecution Service before making his details public. The failure to do so will certainly result in a direct threat to his life. And I think that that's a damn disgrace. I really, really do. I saw on X, scrolling through, that the fella who was murdered in Sweden, and his name is Salwan Momika, he followed me on X, and he's gone now. I find it deeply troubling. I do not want my country to descend into this, but we're already there. I don't know why I'm speaking about it like it's not here. It's here. The threat is present, the threat is real, and Greater Manchester Police, in my humble opinion, have made themselves the provisional wing of these extremists and ideologues. And I couldn't believe it when I saw it. And honestly, I nearly shit myself. I just thought, is this really the kind of country we're living in? So let that form your opinion on why now? Why put this Islamophobia definition now? especially after the likes of GB News, the Centre for Media Monitoring put forward a report saying that actually GB News is almost obsessive with its coverage of Muslims. And the it's part of the Muslim Council of Britain, and they assessed 2 years of output allegedly. They made loads of mistakes, but we in the reporting press are facing these intimidatory tactics already. How much worse is that going to get? How much restriction will we have to self-impose upon ourselves when the Islamophobia definition, as broad as it's reportedly going to be, actually comes about? It's going to place a chilling effect. Well, the chilling effect's already there, my friends. People don't want to talk about these issues, and if you do, you won't be welcomed onto ITV News anymore. You won't be welcomed onto Sky, Channel 4. So there already is a chilling effect. This would be a freezing effect, where people just skirt past the issue and don't address it at all. Unless you've got parliamentary privilege. Nigel Sodden Farage is going to be the only man in Britain who can talk about tenets of Islam in a critical way. This report came out. It's called Extremely Confused, and it says the government's new counter-extremism review revealed, and it's by Andrew Gilligan and Dr. Paul Stott, who is an expert in these counter-terror and these areas. So this isn't about tackling Islamism or preventing terror attacks, which I would like us to continue a conversation on. Have we really learned anything from 2017, the Manchester Arena bombing? Have we learned and progressed since then? I don't think we have in that conversation. So we're still let the boat people come over, not knowing whether they're Tom, Dick, Harry. Well, I think their names will be somewhat different to that, but you get me drift. So they're not talking about tackling Islamism. They're not talking about preventing terror attacks. They're talking about redefining criticism of Islam as bigotry. So in other words, Labour are dragging us back to the Middle Ages, where actually questioning religious dogma could land you in hot water. It's a modern-day blasphemy law, but with extra diversity points for Angela Rayner there. Remember that clip of her surrounded in that living room, trying to convince a room full of Muslim men that Labour's policy on Gaza is strong enough, as if that is actually something that ought to be relevant to her constituents in the United Kingdom. It's insane. So you can see why she's doing it. But Dominic Grieve, the former Tory who spent his career bending over backwards to appease Brussels and block Brexit, him being handpicked to police your speech and criminalise so-called anti-Muslim views, well, that's deeply troubling as well. Angela Rayner may well be thicker than two short planks, but Dominic Grieve ain't, and I think that actually it's those who are critical and those who are thinking about these issues. He doesn't like their politics. He hates their politics. Excuse me. So, the Policy Exchange in this report say that actually this is blasphemy law by stealth. Right? The think tank that's been exposing Labour's speech control obsession. The proposed definition is so entirely vague, so broad, that it'll make effectively... it will effectively criminalise any criticism of Islam whatsoever. And the Labour Party say, well, this is about protecting Muslims. What? Let's be absolutely clear. Muslims in Britain already have protection under existing law. You walk down the street and smack a Muslim in the face, you'll be done for GBH. The law is already there. So ask yourself, what's this really about? It's about shutting down debate. It's about banning scrutiny of Islamism. And it's about criminalising anyone who dares to question its influence on British society. And dare I say it, but Tommy Robinson is very much the canary in the coal mine. You know, who's going to be the next one to be told they can't have visitors in prison for a whole host of other things? Now, there are issues around contempt of court and all these other bits and bobs. But if the criticism of Islamism is put into law, there will be a hell of a lot of Tommy Robinsons. And Robert Jenrick, who is a rare breed when it comes to the Conservative Party these days, my friends, well, he has argued today that, he says the government should drop its plans for such a deeply flawed definition of Islamophobia. Of course, we should tackle anti-Muslim hate whenever it occurs, but this definition is a Trojan horse for blasphemy law protecting Islam. Why do Labour MPs think it's acceptable to mock Christianity but not Islam? A key point here, because if a man in Manchester had burnt a Bible, do you think he would have been arrested and charged for a racially aggravated crime, for offending Christians? Think about that one. You don't have to think about it long and hard, because you already know the answer. Time and again, Robert Jenrick says, this Labour government displays an Orwellian disregard for freedom of speech. And Dominic Grieve had said he greatly welcomed a 2018 report, writing that it makes an important contribution to the debate as to how Islamophobia can best be addressed. And that report was really not. It was a very broad, sweeping definition, which will criminalise a hell of a lot of speech. So I call this exactly what it is. A Trojan horse for a blasphemy law. Labour don't give a flying flamingo when Christians are mocked by comedians or whoever else, but you criticise aspects of Islam, and that's it, you're a criminal. This is two-tier nonsense, but we shouldn't be surprised because a Home Office report found that they actually branded two-tier policing claims as an extreme right-wing narrative. Well, it's not. It's clear as day. It's happening in front of our very eyes. This is gaslighting of its purest form. Two-tier policing and the crackdown on free speech, the same policy exchange report that I go back to here, warns that this Labour-backed definition will be used to silence critics of radical Islam, investigative journalists, investigative, I can't say that word. Anyway, journalists, and even police officers doing their jobs, right? Think of those looking into some of the most awful acts that have taken place through Muslim groups in our country over recent years. And this report goes on. It's a very good report and it's well worth reading in full. But Labour's extremism review literally states that complaining about two-tier policing, as I just say there, is a right-wing extremist narrative. Now you ask yourself, what does that mean? Well, what it means is you highlight that the police turn a blind eye to certain crimes because they fear being called a racist, and you're an extremist. I have said that countless times. I have waxed lyrical about that. Under this definition, people like me face a charge of criminality. And ask yourself, does this mean that the victims of grooming gangs, of terror attacks, or religious segregation at Labour meetings, which I've criticised when Angela Rayner did it herself, are we all far-right nutcases under the Labour definition? I'm afraid my answer is yes. The same Labour Party holding those segregated meetings where men sit on one side, women sit on the other, like some Iranian Ayatollah, and they've got the cheek to call others extremists while they pander to what I would call a form of extremism. Do me a favour. They're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Islamist influence and Labour's double standards are pretty incredible. Among the names actually linked to Rayner's new Blasphemy Council is this man, Qari Asim. And Qari Asim was an imam booted from the government in 2022, the Conservative government, for calling for a ban on a film about Islamic history. A ban on a film. And the limp-wristed Tories, as useless and feckless as they were, they found him too extreme. But Labour and Rayner, well, they think he's absolutely perfect for shaping the UK's speech laws. A man that wants to ban a film because it upsets his religious sensibilities, dictating policy in this country. And meanwhile in Britain, you get migrants coming over, housed in our hotels, grooming gangs continuing apace, British taxpayers funding failed de-radicalisation schemes that have been found wanton over very, very recent time. So Labour's priorities, you can well argue quite easily, ought to be focused on other things. But they focus on protecting Islam from criticism. That's the chilling rationale behind their priorities right now. And I think Christopher Hitchens perhaps said it best years and years ago. I believe this clip is from 2009, but someone will tell me if I'm wrong because he's all a hell of a lot more clever than I am. But he said, and I paraphrase here, resist this now before they take away your right to even complain. This is what they're doing. This blasphemy council, using extremists to help them write anti-free speech laws, arresting people for burning copies of the Quran, effectively having a police force place a fatwa across his head for doing so. This is all happening. Resist, resist, resist. Here's what Christopher Hitchens said, a lot better than I ever could.
This is very urgent business, ladies and gentlemen, I beseech you. Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing. You will be told you can't complain because you're Islamophobic. The term is already being introduced into the culture as if it was an accusation of race hatred, for example, or bigotry, whereas it's only the objection to the preachings of a very extreme and absolutist religion. Watch out for these symptoms. They are just symptoms of surrender, very often ecumenically offered to you by men of God in other robes, Christian and Jewish and smarmy ecumenical. These are the ones who will hold open the gates for the barbarians. The barbarians never take a city till someone holds the gates open for them. And it's your own preachers who will do it for you, and your own multicultural authorities who will do it for you. Resist it while you can.
So he said that in 2009. I mean, Hitchens
This is
quite clearly ahead of his time, my friends. And I'm afraid that the warning there, I think of Justin Welby straight away when he says, you know, it's your ecumenical leaders who will be holding open the doors. How many times have you seen the likes of Justin Welby celebrate other festivals and then build helter-skelters in Church of England cathedrals? I'm afraid that actually the barbarians are very much within. And I don't say that about all Muslims. I really don't. But I do say that about the kind of people that Labour are talking about bringing in to rewrite free speech laws. This is, make no mistake about it, this is the most serious attack on free speech in Britain. You might as well curl Angela Rayner's hair in a tight perm and start calling her, I don't know, Mary Whitehouse. Remember her? Labour are determined to criminalise dissent, to silence criticism, to impose the same failed multicultural policies that have ghettoised entire towns up and down our country. Rayner and this blasphemy council, it isn't about stopping hate, it's about stopping debate. And the question is, how long before you're the one on the chopping block? That's what I want you to think about, and I want you to take away from this. I've never been more concerned about a piece of legislation in the parameters of speech in my lifetime. I'm sure you can tell me events throughout history, no doubt. You're all learned people. But in my lifetime, I'd say this is the most egregious assault on freedom of expression in Britain. We are in perilous dark times. I have neglected some of your questions, my friend. Some of your comments, my friends. So I am going to have a look at what you have been saying. Lots of comments here. Thank you very much for joining me and for getting involved, my friends. Sorry for the emergency discussion, but I just felt I had to, actually, because I'm deeply worried about it. Right, let's see what you've been saying. Right, I've got some of your comments here. Irina says, extremists are using the woke ideology and religion to take control and influence so they can control. They silence people, influence, and then... I've cut off the rest of your comment, Irina, I beg your pardon. And then take control, Irina says. My bloody box is too small. And Irina's comment was worthy of documenting there. Well said, Irina, well said. And woke, woke is meant to be kind, it's meant to be tolerant. We can see that it's clearly not. It doesn't pass the smell test. This is about shutting down speech and debate. This is about protecting the multiculturalism project. Right, let's see what the rest of you have said. I've tried to fix my bloody box. Tom says, they've done some unbelievable stuff so far, this government, but this is off the bloody charts. Madness. Tom, I couldn't agree with you more, my friends. Roy says, the Church of England is gone. I just mentioned them, Roy. I don't know if you heard that. The Catholic Church is gone. You will get no guidance from either leadership. Peter says that won't get through. My friend, I'm afraid I have no confidence in this absolutely bended knee Labour Party blocking dangerous legislation like this. I really, really do not. Andy says, I've got Labour phobia. Yes, I think I have as well. Labour fear. Honestly, I've not been this scared since I was hungover the other day. I mean, how long before Angela Rayner's walking around in a hijab herself? Perfect Storm says, they need the Muslim vote and will do anything to get and retain it. Without it, they are toast. Reform will obliterate them in a fair election. Oh, TT says, I absolutely love this guy and how down to earth he is. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Nicole says that this guy, the guy in Manchester, whose name I'm not going to name for obvious reasons, I hope you can respect that, he's not the first to have his details released. Nicole says Maya Tusi was another. Someone needs to be held accountable for this. Michelle says this law will cause more divide now for fear of offence, and I think that's the plan. Oh, you're damn right. You are damn right. The division will be off the scale, and the fear will be off the scale. Yeah, thank you for those. Keep them coming in. I'm just scrolling through. There are so many. I didn't realise I'd blabbered on for so long. But I just think it was worth explaining what's actually in the discussion around this right now. Paul says, even if you hate Nigel Farage, we must all vote for the Reform Party at the next general election. Paul, I think I'm in the same boat. I really do. I'm just so worried. I'm so scared. I'm so sick of what's happening in my country. I don't recognise it anymore. Merlin suggests that the council will be renamed Britain's Sharia Council. Let's not forget there were reports saying that Britain is the European capital of Sharia courts, in this country. It's extraordinary. It really, really is. All right, my friends, I am going to be off, but I would end by saying vote Reform or God help us. That's what I would say right now. I know a lot of you are very angry with Nigel Farage about a few issues, but I think he's our last hope. I really do. Under a first past the post system, you have limited options. So I just, it beggars belief. Please hit that like button and share and subscribe if you haven't already, my friends. Thank you very much. We'll be back on tomorrow, and I'm doing Sky News Australia in a minute, but I'll be back on tomorrow with a live stream, 8 o'clock. Alex Armstrong, Chloe Dobbs and Connie Shaw will be joining. No doubt we'll be going through some of the rumblings that have been coming out about these issues. And by the way, what do you think of this get-up? Is it too busy? Is this too busy? I quite liked the sort of electricity stuff around it. I just fannied on with it right now. This is all, when you guys supporting us, you help us build these things and you help me have the time to do these things. So thank you very much, and let's see how many more streams I can get through before Labour's new Blasphemy Council decides that I've said one too many things, a little bit too controversial and beyond their liking. We won't want to upset the multiculturalism apple cart, would we now?